All right. Hello, Jackson. I'm Nicholas. I'm going to be interviewing today. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm
Thank you so
pretty
much for
good.
your time.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to start sharing my screen for this recording. However, I would like for you to go to the Google Doc that I sent you the link for. And I see that you are on it. So here I have a question for you that relates to a string. Uh, and I want you to try to implement a queue in order to solve it. If you can't use a queue at first, that is all right. But I want you to work towards using a queue in your final implementation. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. If you need any more clarifications on the question, you can ask me as well. But yeah, read the question, take a couple minutes or as long as you need really, and then we can start seeing how you do.
All right, sounds good. So we have the first unique character in a string. Given a string, find the first non-repeating character and return its index. If it doesn't exist, return -1. Um, okay, so a non-repeating character or a unique character.
Yeah.
Um, so first I'll kind of like try to sort of figure out what exactly that means. So a non-repeating character, let's say S is let's see, glasses. Um, would when you're talking about repeating characters, would you be talking about these two S's, or would there be a different definition?
Okay, so in this case, the output would be zero since G has no repeating characters. And it is the
I
first,
see.
yeah. So in the case of double letters, it would not count. So let me give you three examples to help you out.
Okay.
Here you go. I'm gonna be putting them in the document in just a second. All right, let me quickly format this. So here you can see there are three examples. In the example of leak code, the output is zero since L is not repeated and anywhere else in the string. So it would just have an output of zero since that's the index of the first non-repeating character. Um, in the case of love leak code, the output would be two, since as you can tell, O and L and O both have another instance of them within that string, while V is only shown one time. So in that case, the output is two, since if you start from zero, the first index of a non-repeating character is two. And then in output three, as you can see, we're outputting, sorry, in example three, we're outputting -1 since both of the characters are doubled like back to back, which in this case uh, is kind of like ignored. So it would output of -1. So yeah, from there, try to continue, start your function or however you want to solve it. And
All right.
yeah,
Sounds good. Is there a preset function definition that I should be using for this? I believe there would be.
yes, I can provide that for you.
Sure.
Um, okay, so that's how it looks like. You can rewrite it, but this is basically how it looks like.
Okay. I'm just gonna.
Yep, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. Before I code that, just want to look through um, sort of how I'm going to go about doing this.
Yeah,
So it looks
definitely.
like, from what you explained, a non-repeating character is the first character that doesn't get used again. Would essentially be how that is defined.
Mhm.
So, so I guess like initially thinking about this, a brute force solution might come to mind where for each character, you loop through all the rest of the characters. However, that would sort of lead to O of n squared time, and I think we can definitely do better than that.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
Yeah, that
Instead,
that is definitely a method you could try. And if you'd like to implement that first and work up from there, you can definitely do that. But up to you. Yep.
yeah, I think I might, yeah, try that first and
Cool.
see, sort of see how that could be optimized.
Definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, um, we're gonna be looking at a for loop here to iterate through the string. Um, yeah, we'll be iterating through each character of length 1 in that string.
Mhm.
And actually, I think I want to do a int-based approach, an indexing-based approach.
Okay, yeah. Yep, that would work. Yeah, you could use either, but I think in this case, I would also agree with you on doing that type of for loop.
Okay, so here's the basic loop structure. We're going to have, yeah, an outer loop checking each character, and the inner loop for each character, we're checking every subsequent character to see if it's repeated. Um, so for each of these subsequent checks, we want to see if the character at position I is equal to the character at position J. Um, in that case, that is a repeating character, and that's not going to be a solution. Um, although actually, we don't really care if it's not a if it's if it's a repeating character, that's not a solution. So we actually don't care about it. Um, the time we'd want to do something is if it is not. Oh, I might have. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
So
Yeah, I mean, think
I'm gonna
about
think
it.
about this for 1 second.
Yeah, definitely. Take your
I
time.
Yeah.
So far I've liked your thought process. Can be a little tricky to like think about how it'll meet with the same type of character. But yeah, go ahead. Think about it for a minute or two.
Right. So I'm gonna want to declare a boolean here. Let's see, we'll call it a flag. And what's going to happen is, as we're looping through the subsequent characters, what we want to do is, if there is an instance where they're equal, we want to set that flag equal to true. And then, if we've gotten through all the characters, the flag will be either true or false. If it's true, that means there was a um, subsequent occurrence of the character, and that would not be a solution. But if it is false, that means for the character we were looking at in the inner for loop and the outer for loop, all the subsequent characters were not equal to that. In that case, that would be a valid solution because that is our first instance of a character that is not repeated.
Yep.
So if flag is false, we want to return I, which is the index of that character we were analyzing. So we're also going to want to reset that flag for each inner for loop. And so let's see. Yeah, if we get through all of this and no valid solutions were found, we're going to return -1 because that would be our sort of alternative, not
Yep.
base case, but alternative answer. And
Um,
so,
oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, this is approximately what a brute force solution would look like.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it would look like. I believe I don't think you would want to start J at I, because then you would get the same character.
Oh,
Um,
you're right. I might want to, yeah, start one from I
yes.
because in that case, every situation would, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
for
yeah, for sure.
pointing that
No,
out.
overall, your solution is pretty much spot on for brute force, and even the brute force solution for this example is pretty tricky. So good job. I'm gonna pull up real quick, um, like the ideal version of it, here of a brute force solution. Okay, I'm gonna put it on the next page. Um, so yeah, if you take a look, it's pretty similar. You check if if si is equal to sj, then you set the flag to true. In this case, we use a flag of 1 or 0, but honestly, it's pretty much the same thing as true or false. Um, and in this example, we check if I is not equal to j, and if s of I is equal to j. And then if that's the case, then we set the flag to 0 and then break. Because once we find that, we can just check it and then return -1 if it's that, or I the location if it's not. Or yeah, return I first, and then if not, then -1. But yeah, you were pretty much there. Like I would say very, very close. So really good job with that. Now let's go on to, well, how do you think we might start solving it using a queue? And take your time, 'cause this can be pretty tricky. But yeah, so
Yeah. So, I guess sort of the slightly more optimal solution I would start to think of is, I guess we could call this a sliding window approach. Um, and I'm thinking we could possibly use a queue to sort of represent that sliding window. Um, However, I still think, yeah, there still needs to be some sort of way of keeping track of the characters that have been visited. Although we actually, well, me,
if you would like a hint, I definitely would be willing to give you one. But if you
yeah,
if you still think you can figure it out
if
without a
I
hint, go ahead.
if I insert a drawing, are you able to see what I am drawing here?
Give it a
Um,
shot. I'm not really sure. Give it a shot though.
okay, so from that one
Unfortunately, I
example,
don't think I see your. Well, have you included a drawing yet?
I see. Yeah,
Oh, okay. No, unfortunately, I can't see if you've put something on.
okay, there, it's third now. Um,
Okay, yeah, I
yeah,
see it.
I suppose you just can't see it as I'm editing it in real time.
There we go. Yeah, no, I see
So
it.
yeah, so in this string, um, right, we're still going to have somewhat of an iterative approach where we're looking at one character at a time. However, think about this for a minute.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about possibly, yeah, this might have to be more of a backward approach because for any given character, um, we care more about the subsequent characters rather than the preceding characters. Um,
That's true.
but how this would implement into a queue, not
Would you like a hint?
100% there. Hint could be helpful, yeah.
Okay. Um, think about using like something that contains 26 characters. You might be able to assume why 26. And then you can try to find uh a solution using perhaps like a vector or something that has 26 spots.
Hmm,
And
okay,
I can elaborate further on that if you would like me to. Feel free. It's
interesting.
yeah.
So a vector with 26 spots, obviously that could be one per letter. Well, I'm curious with the
Yep.
constraints in this question. Is this string going to be all lowercase letters?
Yes, all lowercase. That is correct.
Okay,
That was a good
right.
question.
So with each, so what I'm thinking right now is let's just say a vector of 26 booleans, something, just for sake of illustration, 26 booleans. As we iterate through the string, when each letter is found, that letter is like indexed in the vector, that boolean would be switched. However,
I can also start giving you small pieces of the code because it is actually a very tricky one for for using a queue. Like the simple solution which you gave me with brute force is not too bad, but implementing a queue to solve it, although more efficient, is harder to conceptualize, definitely.
mhm, yeah, yeah. Right now, I'm sort of thinking through like in some way iterating reversely through the string and adding those to a queue, and some sort of condition would have it remove something from the queue, although I'm not 100% sure what that might be.
Yeah. I like your thought process.
So that queue might look like if we're just iterating backwards and adding things to a queue. As we add things, actually, it would just end up looking like as those are added. Right? Yes. So if we just iterated backwards and added those to a queue, queue might look something like this. Uh, no, I did have it right the first time. Right. Yeah, I think if you provide another hint that would be
Okay.
appreciated.
Let me see. Give me 1 second. Okay. I'm gonna provide you with, let's see. the first section of the code, or at least one solution of the code, with comments, and then I'll go through it with you. So let's see. Unfortunately, when I take it out of where I have it, it goes into like a weird formatting. But I'm gonna color the ones that like the actual code, the black. Actually, no, I'll keep the actual code black and I'll turn the rest of it green, like the comments. Um, okay, so this is kind of how the start of the code will look like. So you create a vector which will have the character, which basically is gonna hold the character frequency, and it's gonna be 26. Then we create a queue of unique characters, and then we start a for loop that iterates through each character in the string. And then I'll also give you one more line since it kind of goes with the next part
Hmm.
there. And then you have
Right.
a current character, which is S at the index line. And if you have
Right.
any questions about you want me to clarify anything, feel free.
Hmm. Okay. That's good. So yeah, it looks like a character frequency vector. It looks like as we iterate through these, we're going to be keeping track of how many times each occurs, something like that. And we're having a queue that stores each character that's unique. Um, yeah. So continue this loop. Let's see. I'm just gonna format this a little bit.
Yeah. Help you out.
Okay. Let's see.
And for this question, we're kind of getting close on time. So in a couple minutes, I'm gonna show you the solution. We can go through it, and I'll see what you think of the solution, how you react to it, and what your process behind why it might work is.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, we're iterating through the string in a forward manner. Um, and let's see. So I guess, yeah, we'd want to add, if we're having a queue of unique characters, we'd want to add to that only if that character has not been um, seen yet.
Mhm.
And so we'd be using the character frequency list to sort of check that in some way. Um, so we'd have some sort of condition. If that's true, we'd want to add the current character. So when we would want to add that is if the frequency for that character is 0, as in meaning like we haven't seen it before.
Yeah.
And so we sort of need a way to sort of map characters to numbers to sort of index that. So let's see. Something with current character. Let's see. I could do this with numbers. And I think I sort of saw this, but I am familiar with using this method for like
Yeah.
numbers with like
Great job.
subtracting 0.
Yeah,
But
that was. I'm glad you found that. That's a pretty tricky
yeah.
thing to find, but great
Um,
job with that.
yeah, and so that's going to be their index. So that index in character frequency there's going to be a number of times that character has occurred. However, before that, we would want to actually second. Yeah, if that is 0, meaning, right, if we have not seen that character before, it would be added to unique characters. If we have seen it before, we would want to hmm, um, um, yeah, so we're iterating through, we're keeping account of whether each character has been seen before or not. And
At the moment, you should probably, yeah, basically think about whether or not you've seen them before and whether or not they're double characters. You're getting pretty close though. Like it's getting closer. Like you're definitely making progress on this tricky question. And I think in like a couple minutes, I'll provide you with the solution and you can explain to me why it would work and how it would work. Just like briefly, or I could explain to you too. We can
yeah,
discuss it.
yeah. So yeah, disregarding this else statement, if I loop through all the characters and yeah, if I find the character and it hasn't been seen before, we would add that to the front of the queue. And at the end of all this, after this is all iterated, the character at the front of the queue will be the first unique character. And so, but I still need some sort of mechanism to actually increment the items in character frequency. And so, yeah, I think after we check that, we would want to no matter what, we would want to increment that because no matter what character we see, it would be added to the frequency.
I'm
Besides
gonna.
that,
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
I think I'm gonna let you finish up there. That was good job. It's a really tricky question to figure out from that point. I hear I have the answer with, or at least one of the answers, using a queue that would work, and you basically were able to get to a pretty good distance into it. So okay, this is the formatting. I'm gonna just put the whole thing on a new page. That way it's easier to see.
all right,
And I'm gonna shrink the size of it too. It's kind of large. Okay. Okay. So yeah, starting from the loop. So we add the current character to our queue. That's one way of doing it. Let's see. And you did pretty much do it. You had like a different idea behind it. You first checked if its frequency is 0 in the character frequency vector. Here we're just get back to it. We're just pushing it in right away. Um, And then after that, um, sorry, it's hard to read in this format. Then we do basically what you said. So we get the position in the vector, which is current char minus a, which is pretty much what you did here, but you kind of did it in one sitting, which is, not a bad thing at all. This is kind of like a easier to read version of what you did a little bit. And then of that, the character frequency for the position in that vector is incremented. And as you can tell in the comments, if the front character is repeated, then uh, then we remove it if it has a frequency greater than one. That is, if not, um, sorry, if not, we keep. Oh yeah, okay, never mind. If we keep on doing this until the front character in the queue, the front of the queue is unique, and that's why there's a while loop here. So it checks if not unique characters is empty, which in that case, obviously, um, you would not do this step, and then uh, and you check if the character frequency uh, at that character unique character position. Sorry, wait, it's kind of tricky to read this. Let me separate it. Yeah, and if it has a frequency greater than one, we'd want to pop it out, which is basically removing it. And then after that, we just check if it's empty. If it is, that means that all the characters are repeated, kind of like in that AADD example, and we return -1. Otherwise, we basically just return the position, and that's basically it. At the position that's at the front of the queue. So you were basically on your way to get there. This solution also has like a lot more steps to it because I was having it as like simplified as possible without complicated syntax. But you were
Mhm.
basically on the right track, so great job with that. And now I'm gonna go
Yeah,
over a few things I liked and what I didn't like about the interview, just to help you out. I'll start from the beginning. So, and make sure to like ask any questions in between.
yeah,
But let's see. So, we started off here. I liked how you analyzed the question a lot. You had a very systematic approach to it. You analyzed each sample nicely. Um, I would have maybe provided some more. I would have, if I were you, I would have tried to maybe put on some more examples, like type out some more examples and ask whether or not they work, just to get a better understanding of like the methodology we're going to use. Because sometimes just having more examples helps you see the problem better in your head.
yeah, that
But
makes sense.
yeah, um, and then I liked how you started with the brute force solution. I think even though obviously it's not as good of a solution as the Q solution in terms of time complexity, it is much simpler, a lot faster, and it's a good first step to getting your head around the question. Um, let's see. I would say you could you could have been a little bit more communicative about like some of like the specifics. Um, Basically, there was some points where I kind of would have liked to hear a little bit more in depth about the solution, even though it is a pretty simple solution. Um, but yeah, do you have any questions about that or anything?
Yeah, so you'd say, yeah, overall for brute force solution, yeah, I just could have maybe done a better job explaining like how the pieces worked as I was actually coding them. You would say,
Yeah, yeah, pretty
okay.
much. I think that if you had done that, it would have been a little bit easier. And if you have like, a team that you're with, it would have been a little bit easier for them to follow along, even if they like didn't have the code right in front of them, like I did.
Mhm.
But overall, I like that a lot. And still, like for the most part, you were very communicative, a lot more than some people, which is really good. I liked how you drew out this example. That's always good. And then how you created this basically like mini diagram for yourself. Not really diagram, but you know what I mean. I probably would have done this if I were you with a few other, like more than just this one example, because since you're creating this thing, this visualization for yourself, you might as well. It's usually helpful to create more than one.
Mhm.
That way you get to see the different types of scenarios. Um,
Mhm.
but that was yeah, that was good. But could have been like improved upon slightly.
Okay.
Let's see. So, I think you know it could have been it would have been a little bit nice if you had been asking a little bit more about how the solution works, even though it makes sense and I was explaining it. I think there
Okay.
was some differences that were there, and if you had gone into depth and maybe like explained how they work to me, that would have been a little bit better. Um,
Okay.
do you, yeah, let's see. Um, so then, okay, so now we get to your solution on how you would use a queue. And I think for the most part, like I liked how you started off very confident and strong and you spoke well, but after a couple minutes of not being able to kind of see how the queue would be used initially, you kind of started to think more in your head, which is not necessarily bad, but um, in a team-based environment, you might want to try to bounce off ideas even after just like the initial brainstorming process, just to help, help everyone see what's going on and understand how the process is going, and that way people don't kind of like carp uh compartmentalize like their own ideas of how to do it, and it just can get confusing. So it would have been nice if you had continued to speak out loud a little bit there.
Okay.
Um, Also, like, feel free to ask for. I think another thing you could have done is you could have asked for potentially more hints. Like when you're in a team environment, you should always feel free to like talk to someone who might be more qualified for something and get help from them. You seem pretty adamant to do it yourself, which is not necessarily a bad thing at all. And that's like still like a good quality to have, but it could have been beneficial if you had, basically asked more questions because we did end up kind of running out of time. And you did get pretty far, thanks. Like towards the end, you kind of caught up, but there was like a pretty big chunk of time there where it was a little bit hard for you to come up with the solution. And asking more questions to me probably could have been beneficial. Um, let's see. And then, so when we get to here once again after this hint, you started to communicate more, which was really great. Started to become more confident again in how to solve the problem. And like I said, this was a pretty tricky problem, especially it's weird to think about how to use a queue for this type of problem, especially since like a queue isn't exactly like the first thing that comes to mind for this. But yeah, I liked how you regained your confidence and you used this pretty tricky syntax of current character minus a to like push to figure out where you want to push uh the the current character in
Yeah.
the unique characters vector. So that was really good.
So would you say
Um,
that I made a decent start at sort of completing this code?
yeah, definitely. I would say in terms of the brute force, you crushed that, like that you got really fast, even though it is like the simpler way to do it, like it still takes people usually like a second. And I also, let me go back real quick to that. I like how you figured out that you needed to use a flag like right away, pretty much. That was really good. Um, and then yeah, for this one, you started off like pretty good. I think you just had trouble putting your ideas in a way that like can actually be transformed into code, which is something that it's always tricky to get your ideas and your thought process onto the actual paper because, or in this case, screen, because just because you have the idea in your head doesn't mean that the solution is going to necessarily work, or um, that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to just immediately translate it into code. But I think you started off really strong. Like I said, you can as you continued on. I think I definitely think you could have been a little bit more uh, communicative, basically, and yeah. And I really liked your step-by-step process, though. Even though you did get a little bit stuck, like I think it's always good to go step by step. Um, let's see, and then so so once you put this, you kind of like came up with a few different ideas out loud about uh, and eventually you reached this line. Which is where we got basically I had to cut you short, unfortunately. But yeah, I think in that sense, you did a pretty good job of explaining your ideas out loud, except for in the middle. Do you have any other things you'd like me to clarify on or questions?
Hmm, interesting. So, at the times that I was communicating my ideas, would you say like that I was doing so clearly, or like could my clarity have been improved,
Good question.
or what would you say about that?
I think that at the beginning, like kind of like with on a similar path as the rest of what I had said earlier, I think at the beginning you started off really clear and it was really easy for me to understand what you're saying just off what you were saying, not even if didn't have what you were typing in front of me, I think I still would have been able to understand it really well. As you started to get a little bit more confused about how to actually solve the problem, that I think that you did an adequate job of communicating out your ideas, especially when you were writing this section here that I'm highlighting. It was a little bit hard for me to like fully grasp what you were saying at first because you changed it a lot, which is not bad. Like obviously there's gonna be a lot of changes, um, but yeah, for the most part, you did an adequate job of communicating it, even when you were confused. And in a team-based environment, I think you would have done pretty well. I think, and by adequate, I still think that's better than most people, especially like for an interview like this. It's a lot of times people have a lot of trouble, especially since it's like a little bit of like an artificial environment. But yeah, you did quite well with that. Um, and then yeah, and I like how you've been overall, you know, very uh how do I say it? You've been very confident in like the whole process. You haven't been nervous about it, which is good. It shows that in like real life, you'll if you can stay calm and collected in like this type of environment where it's very intense. That means in like a team-based environment where you know everyone and you'll be pretty hopefully friends with those people. You'll be doing even better, which is really good. Um, yeah, and I think that maybe let me think of how I want to say this. Um, like maybe in a team-based environment, it would have been nicer if maybe you could have added comments to your own code, because
Hmm.
that would have helped everyone kind of like obviously you're going to be talking to them in person, but it'll also help them see and remember what you put because sometimes it's hard because you might know exactly what you're putting down. You might say it out loud and someone might think they understand, but then they might not realize what it actually is later. And then if they want to come back to it, commenting it out would be good. But yeah, I think for the most part, you did a really good job. And I really enjoyed conducting this interview. And yeah, great job with this pretty tricky Q question. So thank you
Hmm. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to give me this question and give me the feedback, and I really appreciate it.
for sure. All right, let's see.